Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome you all here today, along with Jeff Zeman and Theresa Millard, for our webinar on balancing creativity and data, how to make the heavy lifting of sustainability easier. Jeff is an accomplished sustainability design engineer and strategist, spending over 2 decades deploying sustainability strategy in manufacturing and product development. Jeff has built global, multidisciplinary teams and has led professional and industry groups in the advancement of sustainability practice. He holds a BA in environmental engineering from Michigan Technology University and an MBA from the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, and he comes from there with us today. Today, Theresa's in Spain, and Theresa Millard is trained as an artist and has more than 30 years in corporate environment working in design, product development, manufacturing, sustainability, and corporate social responsibility. She's an experienced developer and facilitator of design for sustainability and human-centered experiential learning. Welcome to you both, and take it away. As usual, we'll have questions at the end.
Hey, thanks, Holly. Okay. So Theresa and I are here today representing the TrueNorth Collective team, and we've been developing the thinking we'll share with you today for more than 10 years, working within a major global manufacturer and brand. So very generally speaking, I represent the data side of design for sustainability, and Theresa represents the creative side. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be obvious as we talk with you today throughout the presentation. So I'm really excited to bring this to you. The session represents so much of what we've learned in life cycle thinking and developing the practice of design for sustainability tools through working with dozens of project teams. And I hope you have fun as we walk through and talk through how we approach design for sustainability at TrueNorth. Theresa.
Thank you, Jeff. So today is about bringing some new ideas, and we're hoping that will inspire you to take some additional steps in your own sustainability practice. We want to convince you that data and creativity are perfect partners on the path towards sustainability, and in fact, we believe they are key to pushing industry beyond sustainability. The first thing that we want to do is, thank you, Jeff, is to start by dispelling some myths about left and right brain thinking and how we might work together differently. The basis of this is that sustainability is such a big topic. It's complicated, it can be pretty heavy, and we know that we need new kinds of thinking to drive the kinds of innovation that will solve these challenges. We often hear in the corporate world about the healthy tension between left and right brain thinking, but instead of creativity and logic pulling backwards and forwards, we want to consider, can you foster a culture where they complement each other to push the limits of what's possible? We feel that creativity belongs to all of us. We have this stereotypical picture of data, logic, and engineering sort of versus intuitive, empathetic creatives. And as Jeff mentioned, we spend a lot of time working together in this realm, and we've had plenty of debates about what's right and what's wrong on left and right brain thinking, but we know that creativity can be found everywhere, and it is in everyone, and we just need to establish conditions and where it can thrive. And we know that this will allow us to push new sustainable paradigms forward. One thing I wanted to share with you is, I love this quote from Tim Brown at IDEO, and I think that we need to talk about it today relative to the myth that innovation comes from fully formed minds of geniuses as brilliant ideas. But the reality is that most innovations come from a process of rigorous examination through which great ideas are identified and developed. Then they can be developed into new offerings and capabilities. And that's what we're hoping that you'll get out of our session today. Let's look at our ideas in a systematic way. And we know that great possibilities can be developed and identified through leveraging left and right brain in synergy. At TrueNorth, we're using a very simple framework for design for sustainability. We take data plus creative brainstorming, a few simple rules to get us on the right path. It's not complicated. It's important to have a unified language so that everyone can understand the concepts and the challenges in the same way. We have to close gaps between different disciplines, functional departments, mindsets, and different perspectives. And finally, we have a single goal. Can we use sustainability as a starting place? And then as we strive to go beyond sustainability, going from doing less harm to doing more good, we can really progress our thinking and our actions. We know that when we bring all these ingredients together, we have a fun and inspiring time, and it helps us to turn our thoughts around. And it kind of feels like magic. So hopefully you'll feel that from us today. Jeff.
Thanks, Theresa. Well, I think we'll have to admit from the start here that getting started with design for sustainability, it is kind of hard. The possibilities can seem pretty endless. They can seem totally absent, and often we'll have preconceived notions about what, quote unquote, more sustainable means. And we have our biases and hunches that we bring to the table too. And besides all that, our regular jobs have demands that are front and center every day. So breaking through that brick wall does require some work. And facts can help us create momentum by guiding us to the right focus areas, what's within the scope of our control and what really matters. So before we can solve a problem, we need to quantify what we know about that problem. So as sustainability professionals, we really must take a life cycle view. All impacts from a product or service existing must be considered, both the obvious stuff right in front of our face and the ripple effects that are very real. And this can all include origin of materials, fabrication costs, use case footprint, waste creation when the product's disposed of, and really the best of intentions and the greatest efforts can be in vain if we don't ground those efforts in facts. It's a real shame when we miss opportunities for true benefit because we forgot to be methodological. And life cycle thinking is really the only way to guarantee that our improvements really do create a better world and aren't just hiding impacts under a different name. So for a quick example, the TrueNorth team carried out an LCA study, life cycle assessment study, on a stainless steel sink. And at this early stage, we were looking for opportunities or hotspots that we could leverage when seeking out improvements. So in this case, you'll see the majority of the impacts are from supplier operations, especially in production of the stainless steel sheet metal. And there are other important sources of impact that could be packaging or air conditioning at the sink manufacturing plant. So the hotspots are then used to produce a long list of ideas where a team might work. And here are a few of the considerations to think about relative to supplier operations here on the right. So this is based on LCA data, but it also needs to reflect an understanding of supplier and own manufacturing operations to see where the true opportunity might lie. So data from LCA is helpful as a starting point, but it really is only half of what makes design for sustainability work. So in order to focus brainstorming into actionable proposals, we need to use a creativity tool set that fosters cross-discipline collaboration. So let's walk through this as a second step, and Theresa will guide us there.
Thanks, Jeff. We talked in the beginning about how big the sustainability challenges are, and what we found is the best way to tackle these questions is to break the problem down into small bite-sized parts. And it might seem counterintuitive, but creativity really thrives when it's constrained. So if you have a blank sheet of paper when anything is possible, this can thwart even the most abstract of minds. So we put our ideation into tight boxes or stages, and we allow ourselves to become immersed and then imaginative around these achievable objectives. For a quick reference, we want you to know that our creativity toolset is based in design thinking methods. It's a well-documented process, and it encourages cross-functional collaboration through a structure and synthesis within a common framework. This allows us to use our best skills together, and it carries everyone through a series of concrete phases, and it allows us to mentally organize the process. I think one of the biggest things is it allows people of different disciplines to come together. So Jeff spoke earlier about the LCA, and we match these up into some, let's call them boxes of design for sustainability strategies. They focus ideation into, in this case, 9 distinct approaches for improvements. And when we focus here, we can then expand into key areas under these topics. Each area separately allows us to dive deeply into possible solutions. Here you can see specifically what Jeff was talking about earlier with the LCA for stainless steel manufacturing, stainless steel zinc manufacturing. And within the different life cycle strategies, hotspots were identified. So in this case, we're focused on supply chain, materials, and operations. And by focusing there, we can optimize our efforts. I want to remind you again that the trick really is to keep this simple. And we systematically ask very, very focused questions. And it's those tangents that lead to insights. So we're going to walk through some of the kinds of questions that we might use with the team. So as Jeff mentioned earlier, we prepare by doing the life cycle assessment. And when all that preparation work is done, we bring teams together to work through these questions with each one fosters debate, inquiry, and then each different functional team member has a part to play in bringing their skills and knowledge to the table. So here, let's just walk through so you get a real sense of what we're doing in one of these Design for Sustainability Innovation sessions relative to, in this case, supply chain. So do you really know where the materials come from? You can push and prod the teams to answer that question with multiple follow-up questions. And then have you spoken at depth with your suppliers to understand what's driving costs for them? Oftentimes costs are associated with sustainability impacts. What is the logistics of the materials? And what's going on that might allow you to reduce transportation impacts? And then lastly, could you find different kinds of packaging? And this might be quality improvements, cube utilization, all of those add up to improvements from an environmental point of view. So that was supply chain. Let's take a look at the materials. So once the team gets a little bit warmed up, they start to find a creative energy, and then they begin to bounce ideas back and forth. Because the questions are very simple, and honestly, there's no right or wrong answers at this stage. Even the most self-described uncreative person can see that they add something, they're adding value. And we don't leave time in the session for heavy debate. We just drive a quality discussion, and the goal is to generate a good quantity of ideas. Lastly, let's take a look at the operations. So here, we're really focusing on very, very specific things around the operations cycles. And in a 90-minute session, we expect teams to come up with dozens of possible actions. We record them all. We have a lot of discipline in this process. We assign owners where it makes sense within the session. And then after the session, the facilitators will group similar ideas together, and they help the team to prioritize which ones might be feasible, but inside of their project scope. Sometimes time to market, standard cost, development dollars can really put constraints on. So this creative brainstorming opens a lot of possible routes, and we have to go back to the LCA process because, as Jeff will tell us,
I think I'm supposed to say data guides our choice.
Thank you.
Thanks. So when we have all these different actions identified, the credible data tells us which ones make the most sense for the project we're looking at. So each unique proposal needs to be weighed against an existing solution or a baseline to see if that change is worthwhile. The best way to think about a baseline, in our view, is the most likely solution if we don't take action. So it's not necessarily our own existing solution, recognizing that there's a wide range of choices that a customer will have. A wide range of choices exist. So we expect changes to affect the entire life cycle, so we need to go back to LCA methods to understand the effects. So considering that a product or service is truly redesigned for sustainability, we'll need to monitor the proposals across the impact categories that are most material to us. And here in this case, we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions, water use, material health, and waste or material efficiency. So in this example, that orange bar represents the baseline product, And I'd like you to focus on the lightest colored bar over there on the far right. So you'll see that it greatly improves impacts across greenhouse gas, water, and human health, but the proposal comes at a cost of pretty significant increase in solid waste. So even though the second proposal from the right doesn't benefit greenhouse gas and material health to quite the same degree as the one to the far right, it does truly represent design for sustainability because it makes improvements in some impact categories without substantial trade-offs to the others. And I think that's the point here, is that design for sustainability, we need to make sure that we're not moving impacts around. We're looking at a win across what's material to our organization. So the most sustainable product is one that's never produced, but that isn't really a realistic view on the needs of humanity. So by overlaying data on our ideas, we can make sense of and balance design trade-offs and understand what more sustainable can mean in a credible way. Correctly combining data with creativity can lead to truly impactful innovation. So we're designing better and then going beyond compliance to understand where our impacts truly are. So it carries with it the bonus of a chance for us to share our journey, again, in a very credible way, both inside and outside of our organizations. So what we're looking at here in this table are the results following the design for sustainability process on that stainless steel sink. So in this example, a change in the new sink design negatively impacted the owned operations greenhouse gas and water slightly. The design was more technically complex, and there's a water polishing process or water-based polishing process that took a little bit longer than the baseline. But due to improvements in the other life cycle stages, so in particular supplier operations where we were concentrating before, the new product is improved as all impact categories are showing a better overall result. So this kind of transparency is what allows us to be confident when we're telling the story of the design for sustainability process being applied and what better truly looks like. And it's perfectly compatible, these results, with enterprise level sustainability metrics and goals too. So we can connect the activities of a project team directly to enterprise level goals, and those individuals can see how their work directly affects those highest level goals. So when you take those few extra steps and understand all the effects of your change, it really highlights how impactful that creative process can be. So in the Sync project, not only did we go beyond operations sustainability goals to improve impacts in all four of those categories, we also reduced costs significantly and improved sales with a differentiated product. We also addressed human sustainability here by creating better working conditions for the employees, and having access to data like this allows us to do transparency reporting. It even helped us better express the standard cost of the product. Now I think Theresa is going to take us home with our wrap up.
Thanks, Jeff. So we just shared a lot of information with you today, and we wanted to make a quick summary so that you could take it all in. So the first thing is, we believe that combining data and creativity doesn't mean having them working in opposite directions. We don't see this as a series of checks and balances, but rather using the data and the discipline to foster collaboration, drive creativity, and then together it really furthers our sustainability journeys. Oftentimes, improving the design of the man-made world can be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be, and hopefully you can see, by what we've showed you today, that there are simple steps that you can take. Let's walk you through a systematic process, which really can take away the fear of getting started. So the very first thing is to explain in summary where the data is integrated into the innovation process in 3 stages. So first of all, let's identify the hotspots. By doing that, you can guide teams in brainstorming so they're not trying to tackle hundreds of questions, they can just tackle more focused questions. Once you've identified all those possible actions, you evaluate those against data to make sure that you're making the best choices from a sustainability, and as Jeff was saying, costs and other business measures that you should care about. And then once the choices are made, we can give data that summarizes how the design decisions provide more sustainable choices. And then these can manifest in transparency documents, environmental product declarations, or claims in the marketplace. So it's really using the data as a way to frame the thinking, but making sure you're always fostering creativity within the application of that data. I hope that we're going to have some questions about this. To me, sustainability is one big, overwhelming puzzle. I think the biggest thing that we can do is bring everyone around the table, because we know when we're doing a puzzle at home, it makes it a lot more manageable. You can have fun together and you can find those solutions together, and being overwhelmed is not a way to drive creativity. So I suppose one message we would want to leave you with is, don't be afraid to get started. I think it's really critical that you don't feel that it's the same as jumping off a cliff. So don't let it be scary to you. It shouldn't be lonely. It's a team sport, and you have to find people around you to participate and to help you. And hopefully, you know, what we've shown you today gives you the idea that this is something that you could start for yourselves in your own sustainability practice wherever you are in the world. Jeff, I think that's the end of the formal presentation, but we were going to take some questions, I think, if Holly has some questions.
Yes, I do have questions on behalf of the audience, and I wanted to say I love those images that you have. They're very compelling. So here, my first question is kind of a series, and I'll ask them together. How do you do the brainstorming? Is it an in-person meeting or emails, and how long does it take, and who's involved?
I'll go first.
Please.
It used to be when we could all be together, definitely preferred doing it together. We'd set up a shared room, maybe 60 minutes, 90 minutes, depending on the complexity of the project, bringing in as many cross-functional team members as possible. And then generally the run of events is showing the information about the project, hotspots that have been identified, maybe competitor claims, benchmarking, other kinds of products. So we bring in a lot of information to the room to sort of level set on the expectations. And then we pre-select the questions based on the hotspot analysis, and then start asking the questions of the team. So in the old days, this was on a whiteboard in a room with a big messy whiteboard with writing and post-its. Today we're doing them virtually, where we actually build the deck, a PowerPoint deck, and we walk teams through this PowerPoint deck with the questions on there, and then more questions pop up in the session. And I would always recommend having at least 2 facilitators in your session. Someone who really understands the data and the context, and then someone who helps to pull out the dialogue and the discussion. Jeff, what would you add to that?
Yeah, just that. One thing I've really learned from Theresa is the value of good facilitation technique, and that, you know, getting the best out of people around the table and making sure that everybody has a chance to contribute, that's a bit of a skill. And there are techniques to help people feel comfortable sharing that I think we found do translate pretty well to doing virtual sometimes, because there's the possibility of writing notes into your, you know, presentation on the side. Just capturing a chat can help bring those people out and mute the effects. We all know sometimes we have dominant individuals who, you know, can sometimes suck up all the oxygen, but we need to make sure that we're allowing those other creatives and those voices that are there for a reason to be able to contribute too. And yeah, just I've really learned to appreciate the value of good facilitation technique to do that.
Okay, what part of the brain is that? So thank you for that. And how often does design for sustainability improve market share or otherwise increase sales?
Jeff, that must be you.
I think yeah, I think we found quite often, especially when we're setting up the space that we're working in, to understand what the customer wants and what they value. You know, you have the right person or people around the room, and that includes marketing, what is the voice of the customer want? What are they focused on? And when results show up from design for sustainability in a meaningful way that customers will care about, not in a sustainability metrics way, but this product will allow me to use, materials more efficiently, lower my costs, lower my effort, make it easier for me to do the right thing. I think Theresa and I like to say sustainability without compromise. If it's a crappier solution, not giving you the same kind of results, I think by definition, it's not very sustainable either. So it's making sure we have the right lens.
I think we could add a little bit about transparency and sort of in the green building world, how it helps you to bid on more jobs and win projects because you can offer lead green building points. I know you know a little bit more about this than me.
Well, yeah, I think that proving your attention to detail with transparency, and especially transparency that shows improvement over time, is very authentic. I mean, the fact that you're able to be transparent means, well, you've obviously done some work to understand what your impacts are. And showing improvement with that transparency reporting means there's something going on in your organization that, whether it's continuous improvement or designed for sustainability, whatever name it's called, is resulting in continuous better. And I think that really adds to a brand's value with customers.
And the last thing I'd say to that is it makes your products more relevant. When you're diving into these questions from an innovation point of view, it means that you can really lead with some new thinking. So I think it adds a lot in that, which we don't always associate innovation in this way, but it definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
Theresa, there was a follow-up to that first question, which was, what kinds of questions do you ask in the workshop? If you could give some examples, maybe.
We had showed some earlier. Jeff, can you loop back to the slides that showed some of the questions? So we try to use questions that are quite simple in their the way that we ask the questions. So once we've got our area focused, so in this case, we're looking at supply chain. This would be a question that you guys, well, do you know where your materials are coming from? Are you sure? Are there any hidden aspects of those materials? Then working with your suppliers, what's driving the supplier cost? And so every time you ask a question like this, usually there's about 5 or 6 more sub-questions that happen from a facilitation point of view. But I really encourage extremely simple questions so that you can pull out a series of answers. And people, it's amazing when you have educated people around the table, how many different points of view you can bring together. And people who didn't think they were sustainability knowledgeable suddenly become sustainability knowledgeable because their contribution really matters. Jeff, what would you add to that about the questions?
I just think the process of asking questions and directing carefully can help people realize what sustainability actually means. We said earlier in the webinar that often there's a preconceived notion, maybe that it's going to cost us more, that's going to make the product or service less desirable, and washing those away to realize that the goal is better through sustainability, better in every sense of the word. I think that the question and answer period, just creative brainstorming helps to wash away some of those mind blocks of what sustainability can actually add to the creative process.
Nice.
And the other thing I would ask to answer to this question is, regular brainstorming rules work. I think there's like 7 rules of brainstorming, and you can just go find those and, apply other tools to the process. So don't think this is only about sustainability. This is about other methods to foster debates and different kinds of brainstorming.
Good. Nice answers. What do you think is the biggest barrier to companies practicing design for sustainability?
Can I go first on that one, Theresa?
You can go first.
I think it's the belief that it's going to cost me more, that we don't have the resources to do this. I think that's one of the biggest ones, that there's a notion that this is some skill that needs to be brought in, found. Often that creative engine that's already there has it within them to do this for the most part. And the resources needed to get it started are less than you'd realize. If you take advantage of maybe some of the work of others, there's no reason that every organization has to have its own tool set. There's no reason every organization needs to have all its own LCA practitioners. There are others that you can reach out to for a much lower cost to kind of help meet that need as it comes up, as the creative process pulls those questions in. But understanding that there are already sustainability, not professionals, but champions that are already in your organization and want to do this work and need to be empowered, or just need to be empowered with tools and the right resources and permission. And when they see a path to doing that, you're kind of unleashing a part of your organization that's always kind of been there and always wanted to come out. And that the lift from a resources standpoint is often less than most think.
Good to hear. Did you want to add something, Theresa?
Yeah, I always think it's the fear of getting it wrong. So when I started in sustainability, I didn't really know much about sustainability, and I felt very inadequate. And it took me a while to feel comfortable to be able to add a contribution. But I think Jeff is absolutely right that there's so many aspects of your job or things that are going on in cost out, driving down cost, or making yourself more relevant to the market, or driving new kinds of innovations. So within an organization, you already have a lot of people doing related activities. And I think just taking the fear away, but I do see fear because people are afraid of getting it wrong and then it being really wrong. And I think what we would like people to come away from today is getting started is the most important thing. And those baby steps are really important. And what happens is once you start, there's lots of people around you who will help you. Actually, it's amazing how many people will come around and help you on this topic.
Good. So that sort of answers a question that we have, but I'll ask it anyway in case you have more to add, and that is, does design for sustainability require a lot of internal resources to support?
Jeff?
Resources that are specific and tuned to it, no. It certainly requires the, galvanizing people that are in the creative processes already. So from that sense, yes. And its advantage comes from showing how everybody has a role to play in creating better. It's not just the designer, it's not just the engineer. It can be those involved in supply chain and operations, and quality, everybody around the table. The resource I think needed is the programming piece that helps realize that potential and create, an expectation and have it feel like the other important stuff within the organization. It can't be just something on the side that just happens. It has to look and feel like the other things that are important to the organization. So it's going to need, what does success look like, and some metrics around it. It's going to need a process that has specific expectations or deliverables to it. And I think that's where, having somebody have that be at least part of their role is important. But its strength comes from activating the innovation engine that's already there.
Okay. Theresa, did you want to add something, or shall I quiz you some more?
Well, the only thing I'd say is it's no different than any skill. If you had to do some accounting, you would have an accountant, or if you don't have an accountant, you would hire an accountant to do your accounting. So there are lots of resources in the world that will help you, a lot of free resources as well as obviously consulting resources. But I think it is about the mindset and deciding from the top down that this is part of the conversation.
Okay, but so if I'm just an employee, what's the first thing I should do after today's presentation? What are some of my next steps?
I would go find people who you think are interested in the topic. And it could be in a side way, right? There might be a community garden or a local food co-op or someone who's really into energy efficiency and they put solar panels on their homes, or there's so many amazing things that people are doing as individuals. I mean, if you have a group email within your organization, I just email everyone XXX department, anyone care about these 5 topics, and it's unbelievable how much expertise, passion, and knowledge there is just sitting around you. And then once you've got that little sort of cohort around you, or a team, you can start to talk about what does it mean in the organization. And then don't be afraid to ask some of the management. Management oftentimes have hidden passions around the topic as well. And I know I've come across some incredible leaders in the organizations that I've worked in that just, again, they're fearful of getting started, or they don't want to be out of step, but they actually have their own ideas. And so I would just find like-minded souls around myself. Jeff, what would you do?
Certainly that. When leadership sees that there's an internal desire for this, it starts to check a lot of boxes that leadership cares about. Engagement being one of them. Your own employees reflect your customer base too. And I think that seeing that interest and see it be organic is extremely powerful. It makes you want to harness as a leader that kind of energy and apply it toward what the organization just accomplishes as per normal. As a leader, you don't want to ever squander energy, engagement, passion. And this is an area where when people feel like they can do good through their regular jobs, it ignites something special, loyalty, the kind of things that are already really important to the organization. So like Theresa said, I would not be afraid of just even asking the question or asking a leader what their view is on the topic and how can I help? What role can I have?
I have a data analogy for you, Jeff. So I'm probably going to get in trouble for this later. So when you come to work every day, and I see a lot in corporate life, a drive for logic-based decision making. So that's your left side of your brain. So you come to work every day and you're pushed into decisions based in facts. So imagine that you're using the left side of your brain, maybe that's 15% of your whole self. When you use the right side of your brain, you're using your heart and your gut and your spirit. So you've got another 85%. So what leader wouldn't want to use the other 85%? I literally have seen people just being told, just work with this 15%. I want Excel spreadsheets. I want decisions based in facts. I want you to prove them to me. But imagine using all of the rest of it. And it's amazing when people are using their hearts and their guts and their spirit, is amazing the difference in the work. It's transformative, to Jeff's point about the engagement with the organization.
Love it. Just love it.
One of my favorite sayings is that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And
Yep.
Sustainability can be a great source of enthusiasm and just
Yep.
better. Better comes out of having an enthusiastic team, an engaged and driven team.
Well, I don't think we could get any better than that. So I think we ought to just thank you for a very inspiring webinar with everybody's questions here and all your thoughts. So thank you both so much, and good luck to you and your work. I'm going to end this now.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.